You ever get that feeling like we're just stuck in a loop, facing the same kinds of problems over and over again? You see it in our own lives, and you see it on the world stage, these crises that just seem to repeat themselves. Well, today we're going to dive into why that might be, because the source material we're exploring suggests there's a deep reason for this cycle, and it all boils down to four fundamental principles of life.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? Think about it. That recurring argument you have, that financial hurdle that never seems to go away, or even watching countries make the same mistakes they made 50 years ago. Well, the source we're digging into today argues that these aren't just random, unlucky events. They're actually predictable outcomes.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The core idea from our source is this. If we don't understand and live by these four governing principles, we're basically doomed to create and re-experience crises. So understanding them isn't just academic. It's the key to actually breaking the cycle. Let's break them down one by one.
Okay, first up, we have the principle of balance. Now, this is a word we throw around all the time, right? Work-life balance, a balanced diet. But here, it's treated as something much more fundamental, like a non-negotiable law of how the universe operates.
So, what does that actually mean? Well, essentially, any system, whether it's your friendship, your company, or an entire ecosystem, it requires a harmonious give and take. According to our source, if that balance is off, the whole thing will eventually just spin out of control and collapse. It's not a friendly suggestion. It's a hard requirement for things to work.
And here's where you can really see the domino effect. Our source connects this one single principle to so many of our biggest problems. The ecological crisis we're facing, that's a direct result of an imbalance in what we take from nature versus what we give back. Social issues like greed, a lack of trust, even war, they can all be traced back to some kind of imbalance in human relationships. It's all connected.
All right, let's move on to the second principle, homogeneity. This one is super important for understanding how groups form and, maybe more importantly, how they stay harmonious.
You know that old saying, birds of a feather flock together? Well, that's pretty much the core of this principle. The idea is that harmony is just easier to maintain when people share similar values, traditions, and ways of life. And this applies to everything from small families all the way up to entire nations.
So what happens when this principle gets ignored? The results, unfortunately, look pretty familiar. The source points to things like racial tensions, suggesting that underneath the economic arguments, there's often a much deeper clash of cultural values going on. It also talks about how colonial powers uprooted indigenous ways of life, creating a fundamental disharmony that we're still seeing the effects of today.
And globalization is a perfect example of this tension in action. On one hand, we praise it for creating this global village and connecting all of us. But our source says we have to look at the flip side too. The unequal economic growth, the death of local businesses and unique cultures, the exploitation of labor. These are presented as the natural consequences of forcing very different systems together without respecting this principle of homogeneity.
Okay, principle number 3. This one shifts the focus directly onto how we relate to each other. It's called supportive collaboration, and it gets right to the heart of what we often call love. And our source makes a really important distinction here. This isn't about that sentimental, emotional Hollywood idea of love. It's about love as an action. It's the active principle of offering real, tangible support to help another person, or any creature really, to develop and grow.
So, what happens when we don't do this, when this principle is violated? It's interesting, the source says the effects are so self-evident that they don't even need to be spelled out. And when you think about it, that's a powerful point. The pain of being unsupported, the loneliness of trying to make it on your own, the dysfunction in families or workplaces where people tear each other down. We don't need a textbook to tell us that feels wrong. We know it from our own lives.
And that leads us right into our fourth and final principle. And this one is a biggie, responsibility. But it's not just one simple idea. Our source breaks it down into 3 distinct actions that together create what true responsibility looks like.
So let's look at these 3 pillars. First, there's ownership. That's just admitting your role, saying, yeah, I was involved. Second, you have accountability, which is being willing to be liable for the consequences of what you did. And third, and this is maybe the most important, is a duty to others. This is about developing a real awareness of how your actions actually affect the people around you. You need all 3 for it to be real responsibility.
Okay, so we've got our 4 principles: balance, homogeneity, supportive collaboration, and responsibility. Now for the kicker, what happens when we violate them? According to our source, it's not random. It automatically triggers something called the law of experiencing. This is the engine that connects our actions to the crises we see.
And this idea, it reframes everything. A crisis isn't a punishment. It isn't just bad luck. According to this view, it's a feedback loop. It's a natural process designed to make us directly experience the consequences of the imbalance we created. And why? So that we can finally become aware of it, learn from it, and hopefully do something to fix it.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway here. Yeah, we go through crises together, in our families, our communities, as nations, but according to the source, in the final analysis, the experience is designed for your individual benefit. Its entire purpose is to help you personally, to learn and to grow.
So when you look at it that way, any crisis you face is deeply personal. The way out isn't something that can be handed to you. It's something only you can figure out. And that leaves us with one last big thought to reflect on. If every crisis is a lesson in disguise, what is your current crisis trying to teach you?